Hello my fellow gnomes and welcome to this guide on making custom characters for your Roblox game. This is probably one of my most asked about questions since I originally did the video on Teddy. Now you can see I've got this custom blocky dude walking about here, and I've also got the custom spider down here which you can also move, and here's our spider fellow. So if you want to see how I've made all of these, then be sure to watch through the video. And if you have any questions, then be sure to let me know either down in the comments, or you can join our Discord, which the link for which will be in the description. But until then, keep watching and I'll see you at the end. Okay, so I'm inside a studio here, inside a completely blank base plate, and what I'm going to do is start creating my custom character. Now, I'm not going to create a humanoid, I'm going to add in a part. I think what I want to make is a sort of spider model. Going to be roughly based on the Minecraft spider, I think. So I'm just going to add in some parts and try and get a rough shape. I'll probably speed this up a bit and then you can see how I go along. Okay, so here's my rough spider model completed. It's not the fanciest build in the world, but I think it kind of captures a sort of Minecraft spider appearance. Now at the moment you see they're all just called part. I can see them all in the workspace here. They're all unanchored. You don't need to anchor parts when you're creating a character model. But there is something we need to do here. We need to add in something called a head. So we'll name this part, which is our head, we'll name this head. And we also need to have a torso. So we'll name this part, we'll name this upper torso, and we'll name this part the lower torso. Now you need to have unique names for each of the parts that you want to animate later on, because I'm going to want to create a walk animation for this guy. So for his legs over here, well, if you're just having a simple humanoid-like figure, obviously you just have a left leg and a right leg, but here for Spider he's a bit more complicated. So I'm going to have left leg 1, and then I'm going to have left leg 2, and so on. And then a right leg over here. Okay, so that's all his limbs named, and then I'm also, I've got his eyes over here. I might as well just name these to eye. And his teeth, are they teeth or are they talons or fangs? They're fangs, aren't they? That's the word for I'm looking for. I'm just going to name them both Fang. Now, I'm not actually planning on animating these, so these don't actually need a unique name, but I've named them anyway just so it's easier to see. So now every part has got a unique name, and I can select all, Control G, and group them all together. Now, there's one more thing we need to create a character, and that is a humanoid object. So I'll click plus, add that in. I'll notice when I do so now, I'll have the model name will appear just above it like this. That's what a humanoid object does by default. If you don't want that to display, you can just select the display distance type, and where it says viewer, click there and select none, and it will disappear. But I don't mind that displaying, so I'll keep that up for now. If you don't see this, it's probably because you haven't got a part named head. If you don't have this named head, if we just rename it as Gaz, then you'll notice that text disappears. So the humanoid will expect to have a part named head. If for some reason you're creating a character that doesn't have a head, you can always just have an invisible part in there, but it does need to have something called head. So now we've done that, there's also one more part we need for our character, because you notice currently we've kind of got a weirdly shaped box around it, which isn't ideal. A humanoid also needs something called a humanoid root part, which is sort of the central part used for the character, and it can be used to balance it and sort of set the main position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this a lower torso part, or maybe this upper torso part. It's kind of roughly in the middle of the character. And I'm going to press Ctrl D, duplicate it, So I've got an extra part here, and I'm going to rename this one to Humanoid Root Part. Has to be spelt exactly like this. The first letter of each word is capitalized, and want this to be roughly in the center of the model. You can set this to fully transparent, but you do need to have it roughly in the middle. But for my purposes, I'm just having it in exactly the same spot as the upper torso. So once I'm done there, I'm going to select the model again, and where it says primary part, I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to select the humanoid root part. And you notice when I do so, we've now got a much nicer box surrounding the character, and we've also got a sort of grey square there, which is displaying where our humanoid root part is. Super. So now all we need to do is start rigging our character, because at the moment it's all unanchored, and if I move the character into the air and try to run the game, well, it's all going to fall to pieces. Oh dear. So much for our spider. That's not very good, is it? So we need to keep these parts all attached together. And how we're going to do so is using a plugin called the Edit Rig plugin. I use the Pro version, but there's a free version also available. I'll leave the link for that in the description. So I'm going to select my model, and then I'm going to select Edit Rig. And when I do so, you notice it kind of turns the model all sort of semi-transparent. And we've got two options, an option to create a joint and an option to create a weld. Now, welds are for things we don't want to animate. So I also already said that I didn't want to animate the eyes and the fangs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld them to the head. So you see I've got an eye selected. And then if I hold down the Control key and I select the head, then I can select both of them. And then while they're both selected, I can click weld. And when I do so, we see two things happen. One, it creates this little visual line showing us there's a weld between them. And also we can see if we look inside the eye in the workspace, we've now got this weld showing us it's connected to the head. So we need to do this for all of them. So for the other eye, Control click, create weld. And now we've got those two welds, and I'll do the same thing for the fangs as well. Okay, so now all my welds are created, and now I want to create joints, because I want to be able to animate these legs, and I also might want to animate the sort of head and torso as well. So I'm going to select the humanoid root part first of all, and then I'm going to select the upper torso, okay? And these are both in the same place as it happens, although for yours they might be slightly different. And I'm going to click Create Joint. So now inside the root part we have this upper torso joint, okay? And then I'm going to start connecting everything together. So we connect the upper torso to the head, create a joint there, and now we've got this line across. I want to connect the upper torso to the lower torso, create a joint there, and then I'm going to want to do the same thing for the legs. In this case, I think I'm going to connect the legs, all of them to the upper torso. So we'll select upper torso, and then for each leg, and we'll create a joint like so. So I'll repeat this for all of them. So now you see I've got this kind of skeleton structure with all of these lines. And when I look inside the upper torso, you can see I've got all the joints there. These kind of funny little icon with a grey square and a blue dot. That's a Motor 6D joint. Now something we also might want to change is we notice there's these little dots. Now these dots represent where the joint is going to be. Now at the moment you can see the joints are kind of in the middle of the leg. That's not really ideal. You see with my model, I've got a very long leg and I want the joint to be where it's connecting. Right, so I don't want the part to be bending in the middle here. I want it to be bending back at the joint. So what I can do is I can move these, and then I can move it inwards like so, holding these black spheres, and I'm going to move them inwards to roughly where I want the joint to be. It doesn't need to be too precise, but you want it roughly where you're imagining the hip or the elbow of your character to be. So now you can see my skeleton's looking a little bit different now. And now I've completed all of that, I can actually exit out of the plugin. So if I just click it again here, I'll exit it. I can also select the model again, and let's give it a name now. We'll call it Spider. Now, hopefully, if we run the game, the spider won't collapse. So if we run, and you see the spider's fine. He's not falling to pieces, even though none of his parts are anchored. Though you will notice he's kind of sliding along the floor, which is a bit weird. Why is he doing that? Well, that's normally to do with a property called the Humanoid Hip Height. So if I look inside the character, select the humanoid, and if we scroll down, we'll see there is a hip height property that's currently set to 0. Essentially, the hip height is how many studs the humanoid root part, where is it? Our humanoid root part is above the ground. Now, I want it to be about 2 studs above the ground, so we'll try setting that hip height property to 2. And now if we run the game, hopefully he won't be sliding anymore. There we go. So he's slightly levitating in the air. Maybe we'll want to change that property a little bit, but he's not sliding anymore, which is the main thing. So now he's fully rigged. The next thing we need to do is start animating him. So we'll click stop, and we'll open up the animation editor. This is just the default Roblox plugin. Click there, and we notice straight away it says select a rig to animate. And if you've rigged your character correctly, when you hover over him, you should see a blue box just like this one. And so if you click there, you'll notice then you should be taken in to start animating your character. Now, at this point, you might see a potential errors, and I'll talk about these errors a bit later on. But for now, assuming it's all worked perfectly, we'll now start creating our animation. So we'll create a walk animation. I'll just call it spider walk. I'll click create. And now you see I have this little timeline, and I can select a part, and I can say, oh yeah, at this point in the timeline, I want it to rotate like this. And notice then we see these boxes appear, and I can sort of position where I want different parts to be at different points on the timeline. So if I sort of move all the legs this way, and then I go back to the beginning and click play, you'll notice then the parts all move to that position. You can also copy and paste, so I could select all these, go to the next point in the timeline, paste it, and they'll go back to the default. And then if I wanted, I can move them the opposite way for the example. And there we go. And so now if I click run, we should have a sort of awkward movement going on. There we go. We kind of got our movement. Now, seeing as this is a moving one, we're going to want it to loop. So I'll click this little toggle looping animation. And now when I click play, we can see he's going to keep sort of shuffling along like so. Now, animation is a pretty advanced skill, really. There's some really talented people at it. And it does take a bit of time to get used to. This is just a quick animation I've thrown up very quickly. It's not really very exciting, is it? But that will work for a quick animation for now. Now we can stop this, and seeing as it's a walking animation, we want to set an animation priority. So go down, animation priority, and core is actually fine for movement, but we could also set it to movement as well. And once we've done that, we click export, click there, little box comes up, you can give it a title. I'm fine with spider walk. Description, this is for a walking spider. There we go. So now we know what it is. And then with the creator, you can choose to submit it to a group, but in my case, I'm just going to submit it to my own profile. So I'm the only creator, and then I'll click submit. And then it gives you the ID for your animation. So if you want, you can copy that. And if we close this now, you can then add it into your scripts. So let's try and add this to our player character now. So I'm going to put the spider straight into starter player. You notice it disappears as it's now no longer in the workspace or the game area. I'm going to rename it from spider to starter character. And then I'm going to need to start animating it. So I'm going to add in a starter character script. Click there, click local script. And I can start creating a little animation now. First things first, we're going to need that ID from our walking animation. So we can save that to a variable, local walk ID equals, and I'll click paste, and there it is. There's our walk animation. You can do it this way, or if you might prefer, you can click plus, create an animation, and then we've got an animation object here. I can call this walk, and then I can just paste the walk ID into there, like so. And you notice then it gives us in a sort of web address format. You see it says Roblox asset ID, and then its ID. So now we've got the walk ID, we need to create a little script so that the spider actually walks when we do. Now this isn't really a scripting tutorial, so I'm just going to speed through this, and I will leave the script down in the description below so you can copy it if you want. Okay, so that's my basic script. I'm going to rename the local script to animate so I know what it is. And then hopefully now if I click play, it should be working. I'll enable my output as well so I can see any errors going on. And I'll click play. Oh, and we have got an error straight away. Well, there's two things wrong. Firstly, I've got an error down in my output, so I'll have to check that out. And you'll also notice when I'm moving around, the spider is actually moving backwards, which isn't really what we want. So two things going wrong there. Let's fix them. First thing is the error. It's saying work is not a member of the script. Let's just try adding a script. Wait for child. Walk. So that'll give it time to load in. Let's see if we still get the error. Okay, that fixed our problem. And now you can see when I'm walking, he is going to be doing the animation, but he's going the wrong way round. Okay, so what's happening there is with our character, let's move back into workspace. Our humanoid root part, which I say is the most important part, is actually facing the wrong way around. So to prove this, I could add in something like a decal, and I'll notice it adds it to the front face. And the front face is pointing backwards, which isn't ideal. So what we need to do is take this root point and we need to flip it around 90 degrees, or 180 degrees even. So let's flip it around, and it's now facing the other way. And if I add in a decal, you'll see it's now facing forwards. Now, one thing to bear in mind if you move any of the parts like this is it might break the joints as well. So if I open up my edit rig again and just check, we'll have a look if the humanoid root part and the upper torso are still connected. It looks like they're not. So we want to select the upper torso, select the humanoid root part again, create a joint, and they'll be joined once more. Now let's see if we can move this guy back into our starter player and see if everything's working. And there we go. We've now got our spider. He's moving the right way and he's animating when we move. It's looking pretty groovy. So if you wanted to get your character animating, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you are still having errors and still having some dastardly issues, then keep watching as we're going to be addressing a few of them in turn. Okay, so I've gone and created a more basic character here, and it all looks like it's rigged okay. I've got all my joints set up. When I look at edit rig, you can see my joints are there. And if I go into animation editor and select this character, oh no, errors. It says the following parts are affected by multiple mode 6Ds. Torso, 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 torso. Oh no, it's all broken. What's going on there? Well, this can happen if you rig your character the wrong way around. Another error you might find is you can see now I've got this character is all fully rigged and I'm inside the animation editor. But if I select these parts and try and animate them, well, I'm able to animate them fine. And if I go back, I can click play and it will animate that. But nothing is showing up here on the timeline. What's going on there? Go back into Edit Rig, select Humanoid Rig Part, select Torso, create the joint, and then try re-editing the animation. And now you should see them inside of your model.